Welcome to Wellness for Entrepreneurs, where we have meaningful conversations with founders. This podcast is about exploring, educating, and empowering entrepreneurs on maintaining wellness in their entrepreneurial journey. My name is Matebe Jobo, and I am an entrepreneurship investor, scholar, and evangelist. I am your host. Did you know that the average human being lives for 72 years? That is over 630,000 hours, and only has 3,000 hours free time throughout life dedicated to thinking. This is research from both Macro Trends and Jeff Pruitt. In essence, the average American has 49 minutes per week thinking time, while actually the most successful leaders spend over 10 hours a week just thinking. This is according to Inc.com. This is the Wellness for Entrepreneurs podcast. And in this episode, I want us to talk about thinking and metacognition and why it is critical for entrepreneurs. Harvard found that 49% of the time our mind wanders off while we're doing something. Yet, it is the quality of our thinking that results in the best actions to take and therefore better results. So, if we do not have enough time to think, then we definitely do not have enough time to think about thinking. Yet, thinking about thinking, what we call metacognition, is so critical to success as an entrepreneur and, of course, as a human being in general. In episode 23, we spoke about how metacognition is important for entrepreneurs to execute and manage strategy. In this episode, I want us to unpack the concept of metacognition, which is thinking about thinking. It is a higher order form of thinking. Thinking about thinking means the ability to go outside of your brain and almost act like a tourist at a museum, examining closely each piece, understanding its origins, its purpose, and what the artist meant to achieve, and then taking it all in and moving to the next piece. This form of thinking examines each thought, its origin, construct, and possible outcome in behavior. Once this is done, you then select the best thought and its following sets of actions. This is important for entrepreneurs, as we often find ourselves in uncertain and ambiguous environments. Being able to examine events from a few different angles and choosing the best angle based on its merits is critical in determining the success or failure of your business and strategy. Thinking about thinking also requires a level of self-awareness and awareness of your environment. Self-awareness means understanding your unique strengths and weaknesses, your biases, and the shortcuts you use to make decisions. Think of an example where you do not like the color red, and a potential client comes wearing, guess what, the color red, on the day you're deciding to sign a very important deal. Your immediate assumption of their thoughts and behaviors may be influenced by the color of the outfit that they're wearing, for instance. You may immediately conclude that, you know what, that the client is an extremely difficult client. But if you step outside of yourself, outside of the situation, and examine it like a tourist in a museum, as I mentioned earlier, you may realize that it is your own bias that led you to believe that the client was indeed a demanding client. Then you may start to examine the client's argument from different angles. You may then exercise empathy to understand some of the points that the client made and try and understand it from their point of view. So the question is, if thinking is so important and thinking about thinking is even more important, how do we set aside time for it? A few years back, I bought a book by Nancy Klein called Time to Think. The book brought together all the complex issues associated with good quality thinking and good quality listening. She talked about being intentional in creating a thinking environment, which urges each individual to think for themselves and to have their own answers as to why things are the way they are. It is about creating time for solitude to think and creating time to broaden your perspective and understanding through diverse conversations. All through this process, asking the question, why? We spoke about how successful leaders spend 10 hours a week on just thinking earlier. Well, how do they do it? Bill Gates, for instance, has a basket that he fills with books on a wide range of topics and refreshes it every week. From time to time, he has a regular getaway, which is dedicated just for thinking. It is his time for solitude. And of course, you may have heard my previous speaker in episode 23. He does almost a similar thing where he goes above and beyond and hires people to dial him in, speaking about really important concepts that he likes and he's interested in and really wants to sharpen his understanding in. You may have heard of how Warren Buffett reads about 500 pages of corporate reports, dedicating 5 to 6 hours just to read. This is 5 to 6 hours per day. His protege, Todd Combs, did one up on him, right? And decided to read 1,000 pages a day, spending 12 hours just reading. I have no idea how they do it. But one of the things that I've discovered that works really well for me is, and this is not an ad for Amazon, right? But one of the things that I've discovered that works for me is listening to audiobooks on Audible by Amazon. I'm able to get through a large amount of content in just 2, 3 hours, and I'm able to finish a book in 4 hours that would have taken at least a month to finish, or 2 months to even finish. And I've found that that really helps the quality of my thinking and the quality of my exploration on various topics. So let's talk about reading, right? Reading, the quality of reading is digesting what you're reading, framing it in your own words, and considering it from multiple perspectives, asking other people's opinions on what you have read, listening to podcasts, and that's why we have podcasts, and having a conversation about what you have found is one effective way of increasing the quality of your thinking. So, for essence, I think Alex and I mentioned it in episode 23 as well, where we spoke about, when you prepare for an event or you prepare to address somebody, you actually learn more. So, you get more out of it. So, I spend a lot of time preparing for these podcasts and I get so much more out of it. And really, it is the same for anyone who is rendering a service to a client. Preparing for a client meeting, asking different questions, considering it from multiple perspectives, you actually get more out of it as well. But how is it possible to spend 5 to 12 hours a day reading? And I almost touched to this. Do these people not have businesses to run? And just having said what I said, I will leave that to you. And really to think about how you can improve your own time, and the use of your time, and be more intentional about what you do with your time. So on this podcast, you will hear the terms entrepreneurial cognition and metacognition a lot. And that is precisely because we are focused on how entrepreneurs think and helping our listeners maintain balance, perspective, soundness, and wellness in their thinking. I want to challenge you to set aside at least 10% more time than you are currently doing. So start by increasing the amount of time that you are spending in thinking and reading, and try increase it by 10%, or even start to audit a little bit of your time to figure out where you're losing time and how you can better use time, and think about how you can efficiently start to improve your time. And I said to you, I have now discovered audiobooks, and they are the best thing since, I don't know, since sliced bread, right? So I've realized I'm also really productive in the early hours of the morning. So 4 a.m., 6 a.m. This is the time that I use to think. It's quiet in the house and I really feel most unhurried. I have intentionally blocked off this time in my calendar as thinking time. So that is 2 hours each day. All right. And I'm actually challenging you because I also want to increase my 2 hours a day thinking time to the 10 hours that a lot of successful leaders spend just thinking. So please join this challenge with me and please let me know if it is working for you. For now, I will leave you with something to think about. If we do not have time to think and are constantly doing, when will we ever get time to think about thinking? Almost like a tourist in a museum that I mentioned earlier. Thank you for listening to the Wellness for Entrepreneurs podcast, a space for meaningful conversations with founders. Please click on the link below to subscribe and follow us on our social media channels. Goodbye.